Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So wonderful to see all of these folks back in our sanctuary this evening. It's great stuff. It's lovely to be able to be physically in this space. I'll say a little bit more about that later, but just wanted to take a moment to appreciate it right at the start of our service tonight, especially with our teens in the back of the room who are joining us for services and learning, and of course pizza this evening. So it's a wonderful multi-generational crew in the synagogue tonight. I am Rabbi Abby Phelps, and I am joined on the bima here by our Cantor, Toby Glaser, and joined at the piano by our music director, Jonathan Dimmock. And if you're out there in remote land, your ability to see and hear us is being facilitated by Peter Bonos and Zach Migdale. So all of us are so glad to be able to see you tonight. We're going to take a moment to offer some extra words of welcome and introduction. I'd like to invite Eric Migdale, a member of our Board of Trustees, I believe the Secretary of the Board of Trustees. Why I get uncertain about that every time, I'm not sure. But at any rate, the Secretary of our Board of Trustees to come up and offer a greeting on behalf of the board.
Well, Shabbat Shalom to folks here and at home. On behalf of your Board of Trustees, I wish you a great welcome to the sanctuary this evening. As the immortal Yogi Berra had said, it's like deja vu all over again.
Yeah.
It seems like not that long ago that we also had the joy of coming back together after a long separation. And a few weeks ago when we had to pivot again, Rabbi Graf reminded us to look for the unique pleasures that are afforded by being on a Zoom service. She reminded us that there's a particular intimacy to being together but each in our own homes, to enjoy the mystery of which bathrobe Roz would be wearing, to enjoy the pleasure of seeing the magnificent halot baked by Ruth and so many others. And I don't know that I would want to do it often, but it really is a joy to come back here with fresh eyes and to be reminded of all the pleasures that are here. Of course, the incredible joy of being together physically in that kind of intimacy in this space, the pleasure of seeing our executive director's excellent footwear, and of course, the remarkable music gifted to us by Jonathan and Cantor Glaser. And actually, speaking of music, if you'll indulge me for just a moment, I watched a really nice movie last night, and it was a documentary about the life of Lee Scratch Perry. And if you don't know him, he's a real pioneer in the music industry. He basically single-handedly created the genre of reggae, and he's the headwaters from which all the tributaries of electronic music, including hip-hop, ultimately spring. And he told a story that really resonated with the Sherith Israel part of my brain. And he talked about when he first encountered a young Bob Marley. And he recognized that he had such talent, but he said that his music was dry because it wasn't infused with a real spiritual dimension. And so he took him into his home to live with him. And he said this, he said, and I didn't have him stay in the back room. No, I stayed in the back room, and he stayed in the front room. And that's the part that really reminded me of the values of Sherith Israel. It's not just a value of hospitality, but it's a hospitality that seeks to nurture and to respect. So once again, Shabbat Shalom and welcome. I'm so joyful to be here gathered with all of you in our front room. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much for those beautiful words of greeting and welcome and reminders of what's so special about being together and being a part of this community. We're going to begin our service by lighting our Shabbat candles, and for the honor of lighting the candles, I would like to invite up my class from Teens at Studio, so come on up, folks.
Some spooky welcome music for the teens.
These are our 9th and 10th graders who have been studying Talmud with me for the past few weeks. And tonight we're going to try a little experiment where I'm going to make them actually translate some Mishnah from the original and look up every word in some dictionaries. So if they look a little tired in advance, that's why. They know what's coming. But they have given me so much insight about our classical texts and our traditions, and it's been a total pleasure to teach them and learn with them. Who is the brave one who'd like to take the matches? All right, go Asher. You just have to slide.
There's no matches app.
And we just leave it in the thing, and then
You know exactly how long.
there we go. No, that was good. It's a rite of passage. So you don't have to slide it all the way out. You can just take. Yeah. There you go.
Okay, let's try this again.
You're doing great.
We're gonna do match lessons with the teens.
Ah, there we go.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu להדליק של שבת.
Thank you. And have a seat. We now recall that ancient scene out in the hills of Israel where our ancestors of generations before would walk out into the fields in their white clothes and welcome Shabbat as their beloved who came to greet them every Friday evening. We join together to remember that moment in the song Lecha Dodi, which you can find in your prayer books on page 20.
לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, ישמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, ושמו תפארת בלי תחילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם לסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי. אורי, אורי, שידברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוניה עם סגולה, בואי קלה, בואי קלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
What a pleasure to see everyone standing and dancing and singing along to our beautiful music. We're going to now formally call one another to prayer with the Barchu. We remain standing and we turn to page 28. Please join me in reading the English at the top of page 31. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. Turn to page 32 for Ahavat Olam.
Ahavat Olam, Bet Yisrael, Amcha Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Al ken Adonai Eloheinu, b'shachbenu v'kumeinu, nasiach b'chukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, ובמצוותיך הלילה, ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Another opportunity in our service to recall a sacred moment from our past is the moment before we sing Mi Chamocha. We recall what it must have felt like to stand on the edge of the sea of reeds and look out onto the wilderness and know that at last, after such a long time of oppression, we were finally free. We relish that freedom. It feels especially alive, I think, to us in this room and to those of you who are able to join us through the freedom that technology affords us. And we celebrate that freedom with Mi Chamocha, which you can find on page 40.
Who is like you, Adonai? Who is like you? Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai b'gei kamocha nehedar b'kodesh nora tehilo tosefele nora tehilo osefele. Like you, Adonai, who is like you, Adonai. Might Yaakov ugalo miad chazak mimenu. Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael.
We give thanks for the shelters that protect us, whether in this sanctuary or in our own homes, and for the sukkah of shalom, the shelter of peace that God extends over us at all times. We join together in Hashkivenu on page 43.
Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, Ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Guide us in wisdom, compassion, and trust. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, Ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from hatred, sorrow, and pain. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, Ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Lechaim.
When we come together to pray, we have the opportunity to amplify the power of our prayers through our joint prayer together. And on this Shabbat, we will do so for the sake of healing, for all those in our community who are in need of healing, whether it be of mind, body, or spirit. Please join us on page 253 for Misha Berach, and we will pause midway through to offer the names of some of those in our community who are in need of healing.
Source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen.
On this Shabbat, we think for healing of Aharon ben Zvi, Jeremy Frick, William Gaines, Mikiko Huang, William Kurian, Monica Levin, Carolyn Reznikoff, Agnes Rothblatt, Gay Seiler, Annette Wiener, and Shell Wolf. To those names, we add any names that you wish to add aloud at this time.
Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirits, and let us say, Amen.
We now rise for the Amidah, the standing prayer, beginning with Adonai Sefatai on page 46.
Adonai Sfatai Tiftach, Adonai Sfatai Tiftach, Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha, Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha, Adonai Sfatai Tiftach, Adonai Sfatai Tiftach, Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha, Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, ve'Konei Hakol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם, בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, וחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיה הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
We invite you to take a few moments now for silent prayer. When you have finished your prayer, you may be seated.
עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Well, as I've already mentioned this evening, I, like I think everyone else in this room, am thrilled to be in this room on this Shabbat. And this is actually the second time this week that I have had the pleasure of being in this space for a public-facing event, because the first was on Wednesday when we held the first session of our Intro to Judaism class here in the sanctuary. And we got to welcome a new cohort of folks who are exploring Judaism into our community. I don't know if any of them are here this evening, but if you are, welcome. We're so glad to see you. It's always, of course, really fun to show new people around the building. As majestic as it is, it tends to take people by surprise. And I enjoy especially watching their eyes gravitate up to the dome when they come into the sanctuary, and also telling them all about the incredible history of our congregation and of this space. But it was also especially meaningful on Wednesday to listen to Lisa Erdberg, who, among many other things, is one of our teachers in the Intro to Judaism class, pointing out to our new students all the ways that this space embodies our values as a community. Of course, in the Moses window, we see celebrated not just the commandments, but also our love of this incredible natural beauty of California that we are surrounded by. And in the Isaiah window, we are reminded of our commitment to provide for the basic needs of those around us. And lastly, Lisa pointed out one of my favorite quotations from the Bible, the quotation that runs around the outside of our dome from the book of Micah. And in so many ways, it sums up our mission as an institution and as Jews in the world, which is to do justice and to love chesed, or loving kindness, and to walk humbly with our God. Now, I feel like I say a version of this every time I give a drash here, but our parsha really does feel especially appropriate this week, because this Shabbat, we are reading Parshat Truma, which is the first of several parashot that deal with the building of the Mishkan, the portable sanctuary that the Israelites constructed and carried with them throughout their wanderings in the wilderness. And in a different year, I might feel a little disheartened getting to this parsha, because I know it marks the beginning of about 10 chapters worth of excruciatingly minute detail about how the Mishkan should be built, and then again is repeated as the Mishkan is being built. This year, though, the parallel between the Israelites' experience of building their sanctuary and our own experience of returning to ours has infused this parsha with new meaning. It's a little easier for me to imagine the excitement that the Israelites must have felt as they were building what was essentially a home for God in their midst, and how awesome, in the true sense of the word, it must have been to see the completed Mishkan in all its resplendent glory in the center of their camp. Interestingly, though, the Torah has very little to say about the Mishkan after it is completed. This is something that I think I had sort of been aware of, but I hadn't really noticed until I read a commentary on Parshat Truma by Dina Weiss, who's a member of the faculty at Yeshivat Hadar in New York, where I spent a very formative summer learning how to study Talmud. And Dina Weiss points out that while the Torah extensively details all of the materials, the measurements, the methods that should be used to construct the Mishkan, and mentions the names of several people who contribute to building it, it says almost nothing about what the final product actually looks like. We don't get a view of that finished Mishkan, a description of it. We also don't see the sort of grand dedication ceremony that we might expect for a structure that important. When the work is finally completed in Exodus chapter 40, we simply read that God's presence descends into the Mishkan to dwell there. Dina Weiss interprets the absence of comment on the finished Mishkan as an assertion about how the process of building is really what mattered. The Torah wants us to focus on the people who were involved and on the care and the effort that they put into building the Mishkan. And I think this idea fits really nicely with the beginning of Parshat Truma, in which God tells Moses to instruct the Israelites to contribute to the building effort whatever their hearts incline them to bring. Everyone is encouraged, though not required, to bring something to that effort, and then they do so freely, so much so that Moses ends up with more materials than he needs and ultimately has to turn people away. This story, in so many ways, reminds me of our Shereth Israel community, of the extraordinary generosity of so many of you in your time, in your efforts, and in giving to, first of all, the multi-year, multi-million-dollar seismic retrofit of this building, but also your ongoing generosity in supporting us and giving to the annual fund throughout this pandemic. We could not have made it through this pandemic without your help. I remember learning very early in my time here that it was a real point of pride for this community that the retrofit was funded not by a handful of wealthy donors, although wealthy donors are wonderful, but really by smaller donations from nearly every member of the congregation. And that level of engagement and commitment is one of the things that I think makes Shereth Israel so special. It is also, though, something that makes our building special. Because as beautiful as this space is, and as beautiful as the biblical Mishkan must also have been, it is not their beauty that makes those structures sacred. It is the people who have poured time and resources and heart into building the structures. And we also consecrate this building anew with every sacred act we undertake within its walls. From gathering, as we are this evening, for services, to making food for chicken soupers and hamotzi, to bringing our youth together for learning at studio and teens at studio. And it is our community's commitment to sacred activity that has also crucially sustained us through this pandemic. One of the places I think I've seen this most clearly is at studio, which has had to be a little bit itinerant this year, moving outdoors and then indoors and then back outdoors again, as the pandemic has waxed and waned. But wherever we have set ourselves up, most recently at the top of the hill at the northeast corner of Lafayette Park, I have watched our students transform our environment into a home and into a thriving Beit Midrash, a house of study filled with curiosity and joy. They turn the trees and the rocks into play structures, and the woodpeckers and the squirrels into classmates. Seriously, there are a lot of woodpeckers up on that hill, and if you haven't seen them, you should go up there sometime and spot them. It's really something beautiful to see. And now, as we are beginning to move back into our building again, and hopefully we won't have another deja vu all over again, as we begin to move back into the building, it's useful to remember that as much as we love this space and as beautiful as it is we who make this space sacred. And just as creation and revelation are ongoing, and just as the Golden Gate Bridge is always being painted, so too we are constantly building and rebuilding this sanctuary with every action we take. So for those of you who can't be physically present this evening, know that we feel your spiritual presence and the holiness that it brings into the sanctuary, even from wherever you are. And for everyone who is able to be here this evening, I want to invite you to really enjoy being in this space, to relish the privilege of being physically together and in this gorgeous building that we have all worked so hard to preserve. And of course, I want to encourage us all to remember to gaze up at the dome and to focus on those beautiful words that surround it, to let justice, loving kindness, and humility be our guides as we rededicate this space to the sacred activities of community, spiritual growth, and tikkun olam. Shabbat shalom. Being in this space this evening is one of many things that I'm sure we have to celebrate in this community. I can think of at least one. There's somebody in the back of the room whose name is now a little different than it was earlier this week. Natalie Cannell, would you like to wave hi to everyone? Natalie and her husband Heath are now officially married. They had a lovely wedding this week. Does anybody else have a simcha that they'd like to announce to the community, a joyous occasion? I will repeat it for the benefit of those who won't be able to hear. Oh, no other simchas? Nobody wants to steal Natalie's thunder. Oh, yeah, please. Ooh, that is a wonderful simcha. Mazal tov. Ad mea v'esrim. Dorothy's not here to tell me not to say it. Anybody? Sorry, Dorothy, we love you. Anybody else have a simcha they want to announce? Oh, somebody. Oh, yeah, Zach, please. It is Friday. And Tali, did you have a hand up too? Ah, cool. What's your friend's name? You say, what was that? Ciara. Happy birthday, Ciara. Anybody else? Oh, Zach.
My brother has successfully moved back into the house, which sounds like a step back. It's actually not short. He's planning to get on with his life and move somewhere else. And he's immediately followed that up by ditching us and leaving us and going off to Tahoe and saying, no, I don't want to actually live here. But he's back. That's nice.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Well, congratulations to him as well. Oh, yeah, please, Alan.
Some of you know that Diane has been a member of the founding member of the California Wildlife Safety Advisory Committee. Wildfire. So she was on the original board that was set up under state legislation to help advise the PDC and the governor, etc. And she was just sworn in for her second term. A couple days ago, we went over to Senator Gleiser's office.
Oh, goodness.
And he did the swearing ceremony, which is an incredibly, in these days, to hear those words, to honor the Constitution and to give freedom, it's very interesting to hear. But in any event, I'm very proud of her and all the great work that she's been doing.
Well, congratulations on your swearing in for another term, Diane, and please do help us uphold that Constitution. I think it needs all the help it can get. Well, in honor of all of these wonderful simchas, I'd like to invite you all to please rise and join us in the Shehechianu prayer, which you can find on page 344.
I think we should also say Shehechianu for all being here together.
Yes, that too. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam,
Shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu la'zman hazeh. Amen.
We'll remain standing now for the Aleinu, the prayer where we remind ourselves that it is on us to create the perfected world that we wish to see. We find the Aleinu prayer in our prayer books on page 282.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
You may be seated. Our thoughts now turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and every nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. On this Shabbat, we remember for Shiva for the first 7 days of mourning, Aubrey Yowitz. If you're observing Shiva or Shloshim, the first 7 or 30 days of mourning for a loved one, please rise and share their name with us. And if you are observing the first year of mourning for a loved one, please rise and share their name with us. The perpetual memorials in our community are Ingrid Apter, Shoshana Chana Asher, Judy Migdale, Leon Mervis, Harold Weiss, and Joanne May Weiss. We also observe the following yahrzeits on this Shabbat. We remember Lucille Axelrod, Lena Davis, Joseph Feldman, Louise Gerbsman, Carol Hart, Kuna Kagan, Ada Katsup, Morris Krakowitz, Florence Kricksfeld, Dr. Maury Mizrak, Jean Schneider, Rose Schoenfeld, Philip Slofsky, Blanche Tarloff, Alexander Vexelman, Janet Harris Weinstein, and Maurice F. Wolf. If you are observing a yahrzeit for someone whose name I have not read, please rise and share that name with us. We now join together as a community in the Mourner's Kaddish. We rise and we recite the prayer on page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah. B'alma divrach yiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh. B'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei dekudsha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran ba'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. May the one who creates peace on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, and to all the world. And together we say, amen. You may be seated. Now, I was going to say, since we have the pleasure of having our executive director, Gordon Gladstone, with us this evening, maybe he wants to share announcements. But I think he went away. So never mind. So in terms of announcements, let's see, tomorrow morning at 9:15, you can join Cantor Glaser for Torah study, which I believe will be on Zoom.
Yes, and we're going to get from Parsha Truma to Nick Cave and Johnny Cash. So if you want to know how we're going to get there, tune in.
That's enticing. What else do we have to announce? You have things in mind?
YAP for our people who are older than teens, but maybe in their 20s and 30s. YAP is our young adults program, so if you find yourself in the 20s and 30s age bracket, straight after services next week, we're going down the hill to Santino's. Please join us there for pizza and wine.
And is it that Saturday morning that the Minyan is meeting, or?
Sorry, 2 weeks. That's 2 weeks. Next Saturday morning.
All right,
that's
YAP
the
in 2
19th.
weeks.
Sorry, that's the 18th. The 12th, we are going to have our first morning Minyan for the year. That will be in the chapel downstairs. I believe it's in person only. So please come join our Minyan. It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and studio, as per usual, meeting up at the building on Sunday morning and then sojourning to the park. We look forward to seeing you there. I think that's everything I can think of to announce.
Me too.
Natalie Cannell has something to announce.
On Wednesday, I'll be teaching a Merkabah mysticism class for all of the adults. Some of the themes about it, but some of them aren't old enough to. But we'll be exploring the Merkabah literature and talking about the historical movements from it and how it influenced future mysticism and Judaism. And that's on Wednesday.
So Wednesday, you said, right? I'll just reiterate that. On Wednesday, Natalie is going to start teaching it's a multi-part class, right? So I got five-part class that is about Merkabah mysticism, sort of one of the older forms of mysticism in Judaism. So if you are mysticism curious, it would be a lovely thing to come to. Oh, we have a couple more folks. Yeah, please.
Monday the 7th, there's the candidates forum.
Ah.
And on Wednesday, February 9th, there will be a conversation from the front line with Karen Stiller from JCRC about the ethnic studies program. Why don't you repeat that?
Oh, we have a mic for you. Wonderful. Sorry to make you say it twice, but please do.
The candidates forum.
It's a hot mic.
Hot mic. The candidates forum on February 7th will be for those of us who live in Assembly District 17, which is like half the city. And it's sponsored by Shireth Israel, JCRC, and pretty much everybody else in the community. I think you have to register for that when it's online, I believe. And on the 9th, the conversation from the front line, Karen Stiller, who is JCRC's Senior Director of Jewish Affairs, will be discussing the new California Ethnic Studies requirement and the work that JCRC did in terms of getting it more favorable to the Jewish community than the original drafts. So that's a really important one, and we hope to see you there.
Thank you. And I thought I saw a hand over here somewhere, too. Did I imagine that? I may have imagined. Oh, was it Greg had something? Oh, it was you. Got it. Okay. It was Roz being eager to make sure that we knew about the event on the 9th, which we now do, so thank you. So lots of things going on in the building, outside the building, in the digital space, so please join us for whatever you can. We're going to conclude our service now with Kiddush and Motzi. So we'll join together for the Kiddush, the prayer over the wine on page 5. Please go ahead and rise with us one more time.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu זיכרון למעשה בראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. אמן. לחיים.
Chaim.
Would you like to do Motzi?
I would love to do Motzi.
Sure.
The COVID-safe challah is here. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz te'aron. We're going to conclude our service with Od Yavo, a prayer for peace in 2 languages. If you don't know the words, you'll learn them quickly because there aren't very many, but you can find them on page 353.
Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam, salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam, salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam.
Shabbat Shalom.
Enthusiastic teens up the back clapping, thank you.